Hi there, my name is Angie Mullins and I'm a music teacher and PhD student based in Johannesburg, South Africa. Today I'll be speaking about my paper entitled Student Perceptions of Competency Development in a Project-Based Music Classroom. I'm sure as teachers you are all aware of this notion of 21st century competencies, the set of skills that our students are going to need to survive and thrive in a very uncertain and changeable future. I had been aware of this notion of 21st century competencies throughout my career, but it was in 2018 when I started my PhD research that I really started looking at these skills in quite a bit more depth. I did a full year of theoretical research where I read as much as I could about these skills and why they were important and how they could be developed. And by the time I'd completed that year of research, I felt like I had a really great grasp of these skills. During 2019, I conducted a case study, which was classroom-based research. So I was essentially wearing two hats. I was both the teacher and the researcher in the classroom, and I set out to develop these skills in my own students. What I didn't realise was just how much I would have to develop these skills myself. I had wonderful lesson plans and structures in place, but as anybody who's ever worked in a school will attest to, things change at such a rapid pace in a school setting that you need to really be an amazing problem solver, incredibly adaptable and show great perseverance just on a daily basis as a teacher, never mind when you're trying to run a case study as well. So throughout 2019 I felt that I had really developed these skills and gained an even better understanding of why they were so important within the workplace that the students would be entering into. By the time I finished my case study at the end of 2019, I was really looking forward to a year of easier teaching, a year that was just teaching, not research as well. I had been exercising and developing these skills to such an extent that I thought I deserved a little bit of a break where I could just take it easy. And as I'm sure we all understand, 2020 has not been an easier year. All of a sudden I'm teaching online, I'm needing to find new ways to engage with my students, and these students who had shown incredible growth in terms of their 21st century competencies, we're needing to exercise even greater discipline and the ability to execute and problem solving skills than we ever could have imagined. When I set out to do this research, I never thought I would have such an immediate kind of example of them being so necessary in the world. So the paper that I hope you've had the chance to read really drew on my qualitative data, interviews and focus groups that I did with the students where they explained their journey and their acquisition of skills. So what I'd like to do with this video is share some of my quantitative data with you. This comes in the form of a series of graphics that I've developed which map out the competency development of the students. I've divided my research into three sections. The first section is 6 weeks long, where I was essentially just leading up to the project. I had normal structured classrooms where I was teaching lessons. There wasn't anything too out of the ordinary going on. The second phase was the first stage of our project-based class, where the students were designing their instruments. You can obviously read a little bit more about what the project was all about in the article. And then the final stage that I'll speak about was the construction phase, where they were actually building their new instruments. So each competency map shows the students' analytical skills on the top axis, interpersonal skills on the upper right axis, ability to execute on the lower right axis, information processing skills on the lower left axis, and capacity for change on the upper left axis. These graphs illustrate the baseline competency maps that were derived from the 6 initial classes leading into this project. As you can see, they vary quite significantly. Some are much smaller than others, and some are relatively equilateral, while others show significant strengths in one particular area. Each competency map is essentially as unique as the student it represents. During the second phase of this project, I divided the students into groups using these baseline competency maps. I wanted to ensure a mix of abilities within each group and provide the students with the opportunity to work with students they wouldn't normally gravitate towards. Students were given a tremendous amount of freedom as well as a lot of information in the way of my expectations and lots of instructions and restrictions, and they were tasked with creating an entirely new and innovative electrophone. These graphs show the baseline competency maps in blue and the design phase competency maps in purple. As you can see, the students improved in some areas and worsened in others. These graphs show the number of students whose skills improved in green, those who deteriorated in purple, and those who stayed the same in grey. I was pleased to note wonderful growth in the capacity for change and interpersonal skills areas. The students seemed to really relish the opportunity to be inventive and adapted to the challenges I presented them with very well. And then also, despite the diverse groups I had constructed, the students found ways to work together and showed a real improvement in their interpersonal skills. There was also a significant decline in the students' ability to execute as well as their information processing skills. I attributed this to the absence of structure in the class. Students were entirely responsible for their own time and productivity, and this is not something they were used to. I was in the class, obviously observing the students, but I wasn't giving any explicit instructions. The students were becoming quite frustrated that whenever they asked me a question, I would generally answer it with a question of my own that put the responsibility of finding out the answer back onto them. I was also giving them copious amounts of verbal and written and electronic instructions. This was obviously done intentionally to really stretch them. It was an incredibly challenging period for the students, but they needed to go through that kind of uncomfortable phase in order to grow and develop. The construction phase of the project saw the students actually build their instruments and write the code that would trigger the sounds of their instruments. This phase contained just as many challenges, but it shifted from a theoretical challenge now into a practical challenge. The graphs that you see here show the baseline competency maps in purple, the design phase competency maps in green, and the construction phase competency maps in orange. As you can see from these competency maps, the students really grew and developed in unique and interesting ways, but it was really great to see that all of them showed growth or development in at least one different area. These graphs show the percentage of students who showed an improvement in their competencies between the baseline assessment and the final construction phase assessment. As you can see, a significant number of students showed an improvement in 4 out of the 5 competency areas, with every single student showing an improvement in their capacity for change. Capacity for change is obviously your creativity, innovation, flexibility, adaptability, and metacognition, and it was really wonderful to see the students grow in this area. Almost half of the students showed a decline in their ability to execute skills. I attribute this decline to a lack of structure within the class. It was really unusual for the students to have quite so much freedom, and it was something that they grappled with. These graphs show us the differences between design phase and construction phase competency development. I feel that this data provides better insight into the effectiveness of project-based learning as a competency development tool, as the 2 phases that are being compared here are similar. The teaching and learning that took place during the baseline assessment phase was very traditional and did not place the same types of demands on the students as these latter phases. Both the design and construction phase gave the students the same amount of freedom and demanded the same amount of creativity, responsibility, and collaboration. As you can see from these graphs, a good percentage of students showed an improvement in each of the competency areas. This graph shows the average competency maps of all case study participants. The baseline competency map is shown in purple, the design phase competency map is shown in green, and the construction phase competency map is shown in orange. As you can see from this graph, the most significant improvement was seen in the capacity for change, analytical skills, and interpersonal skills competency areas. The information processing skills and ability to execute competency areas declined during the design phase of the project, but once the students became more familiar and comfortable with the demands of the project-based classroom, these skills also improved. I hope that the data that I've shared with you, both in my paper and here in this video, shows what a wonderful tool project-based learning can be in the music classroom. It's great at both developing 21st century competencies, but just also an exciting journey to go on in exploring different topics, in this case musical instruments. I'd really encourage you to give this a try in your own classroom. It's really an exciting journey to go on with your students. And I know that they will enjoy it and grow immensely from it. So all the best, and thank you for watching my video. Bye.